What's up guys, Intelitech Studios here, and today we're finally doing the full review on the Numatic Henry. This one is model number HVR-200, and this is an older model of the Henry where it actually has, and I'll take the hose off just so it's not in the way for this, and this one actually is the older model that has the hookup for the power head. Although I can't comment on that too much because I don't have a power head that works with it. But this particular one is 9 amps, and I'll go ahead and show the sticker real quick. So Numatic International Limited. So it's 9 amps with the electric nozzle, or 8 amps just by itself. So it's normally 8 amps. And HVR-200 is this model. And 03411, so I assume this was manufactured the 41st week of 2003. And yeah, North American Cleaning Equipment, Toronto, Canada, etc. So this is an older Henry model from back when they had the ability to plug in the electric power head. And that's what this will be pretty much, based off, is this model. This is not a compact Henry. This is a full-size Henry. And we're just going to be reviewing it and seeing if I like it. And honestly, I do like this machine, but I feel like a lot of these are overhyped in a way, and I'll explain why as we get closer into the review, and in fact we'll do that right now. This thing is a great machine. It's very powerful, and of course having the little face on it is indeed cute, but it is still, despite its casters on the front and its relatively nice rubber wheels on the back, it's still a bit bulky, especially with the hose. Now the hose is really, really good quality, but it's also really thick, which is good because it means that it's pretty much never going to clog, but basically what you get in reliability as a result, you pay for in maneuverability, because this hose, obviously, even though the actual joints swivel, which is good, it still does have a lot of weight behind it because of how thick the hose is. And the way that this hose is designed too, it's designed with this little angle on it, which seems nice, and it can be nice, but you pretty much need the wands in order for this hose to be usable at all. And of course that makes the machine a little bit more of a, not a hassle, but just makes it a little bit more unwieldy to use because you have the metal wands sticking out. And when you just have this hose, trying to get tools to fit on it and actually stay on can be a little bit difficult. Sometimes tools fit. It is an 1.25" fitting, but because, a lot like the old Hoover wind tunnels, because it fits over the tools, it doesn't fit all of them. So it's very similar to the issue that you'd find with a lot of the older wind tunnels. Now again, that issue's fixed when you get the wands, but the hose itself is very bulky, which again, it's great quality, but for my usage, I just found it constantly getting in the way, and I found it really frustrating to use because of that. Whenever I would try to pull the machine, the hose, it would require a lot of force, and it'd be really straining on the wrist because of how much weight and how much thickness is behind this hose. And of course, you can move it around and all that stuff, but, and this is kind of a problem with a lot of canisters, it's not the most maneuverable thing in the world because the back wheels do kind of prevent it from going free floating in pretty much any direction. It does steer itself very well, and it does really good in that regard, but again, because the hose is bulky and because the machine is bulky, that does make actually moving it around quite annoying. At least it did for me in my household. And leaving it in one spot and just using it as like a bench vac, it works great. It has great airflow and on all that, but it just has too much suction, and of course without having the wands, which I can't really blame it because you're supposed to have the wands, there's not really a good way to actually bleed off the suction because there's no suction bleed off built into the hose. Unlike something like my Mighty Mites, where there is suction bleed off built into the hose, and something like that is a lot more maneuverable because yes, the canister itself is a lot more maneuverable than something like a basic Mighty Mite, but the hose is a lot more unwieldy, so it kind of cancels out in a way, and it makes it a little bit annoying to use, at least for me. Now there are compact model Henrys that are a little bit easier to use in that regard, but I haven't used one of those. This is one of the older models. Now, newer Henrys are a little bit different because they won't have the built-in option for the power nozzle, but there's ways to mod it and add it to the machine. But they also will add tool storage back here, which for whatever reason is not a thing on these older models. And of course, this didn't come with any tools, but when you get the wands, like I said, it is 1.25 inches, so you can literally get any tools, and they all work with this. So that all is really good, but there's plenty of other canisters that are like that as well. The Mighty Mite is also a machine that can use 1.25 inch tools, so it's not a huge thing, but again, it does struggle with 1.25 inch tools because of it not having the wand, which again, you could argue that's not its fault, but I would have liked to see this connector be a little bit more forgiving whenever you don't have the wands, because usually I prefer having just a basic hose connector like this. I don't really think making it necessary to have the wands in order for the hose to be usable is ideal, at least not for me. Now, this machine, one thing I really like about this machine is that it has a cord reel, but it doesn't. It's a manual cord reel. So the cord is still wrapped up, but it's wrapped up out of the way, and you manually turn this to retract the cord. It can definitely get stuck sometimes. To be fair, this is an older unit. This machine's 20 years old. But it's actually kind of a nice, happy medium between having... Bless you. It's actually a nice... Bless you again. It's actually a nice, happy medium between having having a cord reel and not having a cord reel, because it effectively does is just a manual cord reel. So you don't have to wind it around cord winders, but you also don't have some sort of motorized system that can fail or break after a while. So that's a nice little solution. I actually kind of like that, and I'm surprised that's not more common on canisters. Now again, I don't have a problem with the Mighty Mite, just the way that it has a basic set of cord wraps, but this is an interesting little solution, and it's kind of nice. And it's kind of funny seeing a yellow commercial cord, but then a standard, not even polarized, like this isn't even a polarized plug. It's not even polarized, let alone grounded, and yet it still has the commercial cord, which is another thing. So this plug is not polarized, so if for whatever reason, I don't know why you would be, but if for whatever reason your house still has outlets that do not have any polarized plugs, then maybe that could be although I feel like if you're willing to buy a $500 vacuum, then I feel like you probably replace your outlets too, but who knows, maybe there's a reason for it. So it's not polarized, so depending on some applications that could be useful. And the cord length is actually really nice. I mean, you can tell the cord is pretty much around the entire inner part of the machine. So it actually is a decent cord length compared to most other canisters, and it was a bit longer than I was expecting, although I don't remember the exact spec off the top of my head. But although a lot of times, funnily enough, I do often find myself, because I usually have extension cords ran. Again, this can be kind of difficult to twist after a while, but I do often find myself just kind of, plugging an extension cord into the output cord and just being done with it. So it's not always, necessary, but it is still nice. So that's pretty interesting. And this machine is also really quiet as well, and I'll demo that in a sec. It's very quiet and it has a lot of power. I really wish I had one of those airflow gauges, because I feel like that'd be a good machine to test it with. We'll pop it on real quick. It's not even all that loud, so it's very quiet. Of course, the output's right there. Now, of course, without the electric power head, this thing is not very appropriate for my home with the amount of carpet and everything that I have, but for bare floors and stuff like that, it definitely works. But again, I just never chose to use this over my Mighty Mite because it's just unwieldy and it just gets caught and bumped on everything. Which again, maybe that's not the machine's fault, maybe it is, but it's part of the reason why I never use this, because even as a bench, the hose just got in the way, and that's part of the reason why it's not staying in the collection, just because it's just too unwieldy, and at the end of the day, if I'm not using it, I don't really collect canisters, so for me, this isn't really the ideal machine. But for someone who doesn't mind the bulkiness and they want something that's going to be the best quality, and they want something that's going to be durable and last a long, long time, this is definitely a good option, especially if you ever decide you want to vacuum with a face on it. So if we pop this top part off, we can see the motor, the whole motor assembly is right in there. And here is a filter. So there's, at least I assume this is a filter. It looks like a filter. And then there's our bag. Now, of course, this part is really lightweight. So most of the weight of this is mostly just because of the motor housing kind of clamping down on the main canister. Now, it has a paper bag, but when you buy these days, they usually come with HEPA bags. I've actually got a whole pack of high-efficiency filter bags. So I've been running this with just the paper bag, and, you know, these would be even better than the paper. So, you know, if it's running this well with the paper bags, then it would run even better with the HEPA. So the modern bags for these are, I mean, really, really high-quality bags. And they're surprisingly, you know, compared to a lot of the other, like, boutique bagged vacuum brands, like, when you compare these to, like, Cibo bags or Miele bags, you know, from what I remember at least, I didn't look up the prices before this, but these feel like they're a lot cheaper. So, you know, and they last a long time, too. I mean, I've never replaced this bag, and I've had this thing for, like, 5 months. Obviously, I haven't used it that whole time, but, you know, there's still plenty of space left in here, and I've, you know, used it for a few things at least. But yeah, so, and one little story about this that I'll tell before we end this video, but I never had one of these as a kid for mainly, not just because, I probably should put the filter back in, that might be kind of important, but I never had one of these as a kid, not just because I didn't really know much about them, and I actually didn't even know they were in the US. I assumed they were just a British only machine for a while. But the face at first kind of creeped me out whenever I was a kid, and it was kind of haunting. But nowadays that I've actually seen one in person, it's actually quite cute. And on the newer Henrys, this is actually a plate that attaches to the hose, and you can actually remove the face if you wanted to for whatever reason. Although that's kind of part of its personality. So I don't really know why you would. But on the newer machines, you can if you were ever so inclined to. I mean, you'd be a monster, but you could do that. So that's pretty much that. So that's pretty much just a quick review on the Henry HVR-200. It's a great machine. It's built very well, and overall, it's definitely a good machine if you're looking for a canister that can basically if you're looking for the most rugged canister you can get, this is pretty much what most people would settle on. And again, the newer version is a little bit more compact. Needs some modding if you want to add a power head, but it is doable, and actually has onboard tool storage. So you can find plenty of videos out there on the newer Henrys, but on this older model, of course, the flagship feature is being able to just plug in a power head, but unfortunately, again, I don't have one to test. Had I kept this machine, I would have probably looked for it, but I just don't like this enough to really justify getting the power head for it. And if I'm not going to use it, then it's probably better suited for another collector that will actually appreciate it more than I would. Because, I mean, I don't know. For whatever reason, I just always gravitate towards cheap machines. And I think this is just another reason why. Because my Mighty Might, obviously this machine is objectively better than the Mighty Might. It's way more powerful, it's more durable, and it has, you know, the motor's rated to a much higher level of time. I said that really weird. The working hours on this motor is pretty intense as far as like what it's certified to. But my Mighty Might still does everything I need a canister to do, and since I don't normally collect canisters, uprights are usually my main thing, then I need a lot less out of my canisters. I'm still interested in trying a Miele or a Cibo canister, ideally both, sometime within the next couple years. But for now, the Henry is interesting. I'm happy to have it on the channel, but it's going to go to another collector. So you'll see this on another channel very soon. I actually traded this for a Dyson DC-21 stowaway. So we'll see that very soon on the channel. But yeah, so that's the Henry HVR-200, and that's the full review of it. I mean, it is a basic canister, so this is definitely a very short review because there's not as much to say. But overall, like I said, it's built very well, but for me, it's just too unwieldy, and the features that this thing, you know, entails just doesn't do much for me, so it's not ultimately going to stay in the collection. It's going to go to someone who will appreciate the Henry more and actually utilize that power nozzle input. So yeah, this is Intelitech Studios signing out with the full review on the Henry HVR-200, my first impressions and my first ever Henry that I've ever owned. And yeah, like I said, I did like it. I have nothing against this machine. I do really like it, but it's just too unwieldy for me, and for me, that's just a deal breaker. But anyways, this is Intelitech Studios signing out. I'll try to link a current version of this in the description for if you are interested in buying one of these, because again, if you like the face, if you like the maneuverability, and you like having a really powerful machine, especially if you have, you know, mostly bare floors and short area rugs, then this could be a good option. There's a couple models with turbo nozzles too. This one actually has a turbo nozzle, but I lost the turbo nozzle, so which is unfortunate because I wanted to comment on that. Although I still can comment on it because I did use it. It's not great. It's not very powerful, and the brushes are very soft, and they don't really groom or do very much at all. So the turbo head that came with this model, at least, I can't really say too many positive things about. I mean, it wasn't even built all that well. But regardless, I mean, you mostly buy one of these for straight suction applications anyways. And for that, this machine does a great job. But yeah, so anyways, this is Intelitech Studios signing out. Have a good one. Peace.